Okay, so hey, train your plants every day. A1 coming at you from the STEM lab. So I figured, I was watching, and I forget his name. I just subscribed to him a little while ago. He does big outdoor grows and things like that. I think they call it no-till soil or no-till potting. Anyways, I love his show. He's a hell of a grower, and I'm always update trying to find a new subscribe to just learn something new or adapt into anything. And anyways, he got into pot loading and stuff like that, which I really like. But for indoor grows, it can be a problem. Um, if you're gonna get away with it, you have flush conditions and things like that to, to generally model after. The plant is gonna die. It's gonna grow to the flowering stage, and it's gonna die. Um, which all that's cool and well. But in the indoor, you can wind up with some problems. Like they just don't hold as much nutrients. They'll burn right through all that, and it's one of the bigger reasons why you can't really pot load like that. Obviously, you can do it early and really bump up. I know I did it with worm castings and just whatever. You can use pond sludge or compost tea or just a compost variation. All those are great organic ways to do this. But I wanted to throw some curveballs at you with what I used to do when I had some big girls outside, or whenever I was in a pinch for nutrients or something like that. What are some of the tricks that I did that'll really help me do that? Now, again, I'm not right at the moment. I'm just trying this. This is actually my first run with running chemicals like this. And you'll have to work the flush. I push it to what I need it to do. But regardless of what you do, you're probably going to need to work that flush anyways. So what we have are just some basic ingredients, something you'll find in the kitchen. We got some lettuce, some cabbage, some corn, and things like, or some carrots, and things like that. And you're gonna find this is your nitrogen mix right here. Obviously, there's gonna be a lot of trace elements inside of here, and to exactly determine what cut ratio, you kind of have to balance that out yourself. If you go too thick, then you have to cut it with a lot of water or let it go for extra days in feedings. If you cut it too thin, you're not really supporting the plant for anything, but at least you're giving it something. You're giving it some level of nitrogen. You cut up in a blender with some water, and you continue. But nitrogen is going to be high on this, on the grassy material, spinach, lettuce, anything you want to cut up. All right, so nitrogen, phosphorus. All right, magnesium and phosphorus. All right, so what I got here is some black oil sunflower seeds, and I'll just throw this all right in the blender together. They're really high from what I checked on the internet on phosphorus, magnesium, some of that base trace elements. Now again, these are all bought from the store out of the bag, so I imagine that they're going to be putting some level of nitrogen in it, so they can grow the most healthiest seeds that they can do. So you're also getting beneficially out of that. You can take any one of these, but you're trying to maximize it the best you can for the NPK and trace elements. So now we get into a little bit more of the potassium, and I wish I had a banana, obviously, but let's use a Force MA problem instead. Now, there's going to be some level of potassium in here, some level of magnesium, but you got to be careful with apples because generally they carry a high acidity. So you have to cut down on the numbers that you use, or you have to adjust your pH accordingly. And again, this is just throw some of it, cut up this apple, throw it in the blender, pour it into this, take a handful of this stuff right here, throw it in the blender, put it in there, the sunflower seeds, and basically anything you have handy that's going to make a fairly rich concentrate. This is not something that I would just dump on my plants all in one go, especially if I made it really thick. You can put molasses in there, honey in there. All of those make for really good organic feeding solutions that in a pinch or if you're treating like that because you got maybe you got some extra salad around the house that you didn't eat in time, or you just have an abundancy of stuff and you can use it like that. The way to cut that down you have to cut that down. You have to do it over days and feedings, or make that super concentrate, just like a super. You got lettuce, you got everything else in there, is going to be generally super concentrated. You wouldn't just put this on there. You would cut it with water first. So with that, now it brings up the next problem. You have mold and insects problems, and that's where it starts to get into the timelines of, I water it, you have to let it run through a dry cycle, at least on the top phase, so a couple of days, and then you hit it with water again, just like you would a standard chemical feeding, but you have to scratch off the top, make sure there's no mold growth on top there. It's not super horrible, but it attracts insects, and if you don't take care of it, it can cause stem rot and things like that. So it's just one of those things you have to be mindful about. If you're not going to pot load or work to the clean zeroed out system. These remain zeroed out. I feed them, I run the water until that's almost flushed out with chemicals, and you do that again. And essentially, you're trying to do that with organic feedings as well. Beyond that, structure and whatever really doesn't matter, but you're basically trying to chase out the NPK and trace. So grass has a lot of nitrogen in it. Bananas and fruits like that are soft in acidity have a lot of potassium in them. Some weird ones. You'd be amazed. Here at a can of light red kidney beans, and there's actually quite a bit of potassium inside of there. Along with when this breaks down, it'll be nitrogen. It'll be beneficial for the microbes, but that's quite a bit. So you have to figure out a way to cut this. Remember, just like you being based on a 2,000 calorie a day diet, our body weight doesn't change, very rapidly. What actually happens in there is quite a rapid changing in mass and water usage over a fairly fast amount of time. I'm not 100 pounds worth, so immediately going to have to cut this way down before I feed it to something like that. And you have to cut it again, not make the mold and not make the problems that you would generally have, and feed accordingly. Every other day, every 2 days, depending on how thick you make it. But that's my note for organics. Again, you still have the same problem. I really don't know what they were putting into their lettuce and their corn. But here at this stage of it, you're in vegetation anyways. These are not autoflowers. And so it makes, I just flipped the lights yesterday, so we're going to be seeing what she'll look like in flower. She's got a nice deep range. We're looking at about probably 5 inches, 6 inches maybe, and then she'll stretch out another 5, 6, 7 maybe. We'll see what she does. But yeah, so that's my note on organics. Again, I used to have big plants, and I used to feed them like that outside. I wish I could go back to that method, but where I live and the way things are, that's just not an option for me. So it kind of reduces me back down to using this technique and staying within the frames and the cost ranges that are actually useful for me. Here, it's just, man, I'd love to go back outside and go big and green, but it's just not an option for me. So those are my notes. Man, I wish I would remember that guy's name that I'm talking about too. Is organic. Yeah, he's always wearing the mask with the little cigar. Oh man, I love his show. A lot of them actually. There's a lot of good growers out there, time-lapse models that I'm actually considering top range notes for when they start in flower. And we'll actually be doing that in this grow. Right now we've just started in flower. She's at her first day, other than what I sexed her. I sexed her for a week at month 1. And they'll grow like that. They'll stack out like that a little bit better. Yeah, that's a technique. Not always going to be better for everybody. But so we're going to stay with her and actually see the size differential from first day in flower to last day in flower, full harvest. So I hope this note was useful for you. I'm still always learning every day. You know, there's always a new note you can adapt or take or tweak in. So give me a thumbs up, give me a like. You know, let me know what you guys think. I'll give you guys any cut ratios that I have. I've always done it by eye, but one of the biggest tricks is I'll tell you is I added honey, sunflower seeds, lettuce, spinach, something like that. A lot of trim from my leaf or from my plant. If I had any saved up, you throw that in the blender too. Give it right back to them. I mean, especially if you're putting stuff into them. You know, you do top feedings with soil or compost. Honey in the solution. The biggest things I tell you is when I did it, it would taste like a Neapolitan milkshake, and that always did killer for me on that ratio like that. Not super thick where I could spill it in there. Maybe you see a little bits of chunks of sunflower seeds in the mix, but over a day or two, that all breaks down, and everything else just settles into it. You push it with water the next day or two, depending on the age of the plant, of course, and you work it with there. It's fairly complicated doing it like this in here, but if you don't have an option, if you know that was the only food supply you had left, or you wanted to go true, or I mean true organic. There's nice organics out there, but you wanted to do it personally for yourself, or you needed to supplement for some reason. That's a good way to do it. So that's my note. I'll catch you on the next one.